Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a band called Salvation, and a Seattle band. So, I'm doing these videos. I'm finding a handful of really cool Seattle bands that people don't know about. Of course, people think of Seattle bands, they think of the grunge era and the like, but there was actually a pretty healthy psych scene here during the 60s. And Salvation is right up there, although they started in Seattle and then they moved to San Francisco. And they started out as the New Salvation Army Band, spelled Banned, but of course had some issues with the name because of the Salvation Army, so they shortened the name to Salvation. They were together from 1967 to 1970, and the band was Al Lind on vocals, Joe Tate on guitar, Artie McLean on bass, Teddy Stewart on drums, and Art Resnick on keyboards. And Art Resnick, that name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure what he ended up doing. But he ended up getting signed to ABC Records, pretty much a major label at the time, and put out two albums. December 1967, they put out the album Salvation, and then in 1968, soon after the first album, Gypsy Carnival Caravan. And I ended up buying both in cutouts, probably about 1971 or so. And I wasn't really sure what to expect. They looked like they were a more modern band and weren't like necessarily a 60s sunshine pop band or anything like that. I try to avoid that kind of stuff when I was buying cutouts in the 70s. But the covers are cryptic enough, especially Carnival Caravan, where I thought they could end up being somewhat hard psych or something like that. But I got them home, and they weren't hard psych, but definitely a psychedelic band. And even though they have a keyboard player, they're not necessarily dominated by keyboards, but the keyboard work is outstanding. And there's a lot of distortion in electric keyboard work, and a lot of it's pretty esoteric. So that really adds to the band. And then Joe Tate plays some great classic psychedelic fuzz guitar. The band itself is really strong, great rhythm section, and Al Lind has some um, very wonderful vocals. I'm not sure how to describe his sound. When I listen to Salvation, I can actually hear some Dylan influence, and so when I hear it, and I think of stuff like Dylan's era of doing Highway 61 Revisited, it seems to me there's some influence there. And not that Al Lind sounds anything like Bob Dylan, but he's got some really interesting phrasing and choice of tonalities and whatnot, and then the lyrical content. And I just find them really, really totally satisfying. And the more I've listened to these two Salvation albums over the years, the more I think they're just classics, and definitely should have been big hits. Although I guess they didn't really have didn't get much airplay. They did fairly well playing down in San Francisco, and definitely got some airplay up here in Seattle at the time. So they kind of flirted with success, and at one point they even headlined at the Fillmore East out in New York. So they definitely got enough of a high profile and a reputation to do pretty well there. And then they also opened for bands like The Doors and Big Brother and the Holding Company, and I think they would have been a great opening act. And I guess I'd put them somewhere between a first tier and a second tier band. In many respects, they're a second tier band, but I want to put them in the first tier band category. I think for a 1967, 1968 psychedelic band, they're really strong. The music still holds up after all these years, um, and the material's really good, and the singer's really good, and the band is really good. And I think they probably could have been pretty successful with better promotion. Not quite as legendary as bands like Quicksilver Messenger Service and the Doors and things like that, but they had their own niche, and I think they could have really made a name for themselves and probably had a couple of hits. And there's definitely songs on their records that could have been hits. They actually released 45 of a song Think Twice, and the B-side Love Comes in Funny Packages. And Think Twice definitely sounds like it could have been a hit to me. So they do have that classic San Francisco style psychedelic sound crossed with kind of mid 60s Dylan, and it works really well. And there's a certain timeless quality to it. It definitely captures the era very well uh, without sounding outrageously dated. And there's nothing too banal about them. And just think they're a really solid band. And contrary to what a lot of reviewers have written, I think the second album is really excellent as well. The first album definitely had more of a gestation period, so by the time they recorded it, they were ready to go. But I find the stuff on the second album, Carnival Caravan, pretty adventurous as well. And even the band members tend to think the first album is way better, but I think they're both great albums. So for you out there that like that mid-period Dylan, or you like San Francisco psychedelic sound, these could be a couple of real gems for you. Um, Other people may find the records more dated and maybe aren't as crazy about late '60s psychedelia because they're they're not crazy dramatic. I mean, there's no lysergic, crazy fuzz guitar leads. It's fairly conventional rock in a lot of ways that just has some psychedelic elements to it, and there's a lot of pretty cool improvisations and a lot of interesting keyboard work and stuff that's kind of borders on the avant-garde sometimes, but I think that's just part of the psychedelic experimentation. And the arrangements are generally pretty straightforward, but pretty satisfying. And there's a reasonable amount of complexity to it that makes the record not just wash over you. It's a really a good sit down and listen record. So turn on the Lavalite, smoke some weed, put on some Salvation, and excellent listen. Both albums. Again, I highly recommend them. I think they're both great albums, and any other reviewers that say otherwise, I think are missing the point. So links are below. Check them out. Salvation.